Welcome along to the latest edition of the 98 Not Out podcast. Today we're talking white ball, red ball, yellow, green, brown, blue, pink and black. Yes, we have gone snooker loopy on 98 Not Out with Neal Foulds. Hello, Neal. Welcome to 98 Not Out. Wonderful to have you join us. And you are speaking to us live and direct from the Barbican in York, I believe.
That's correct. Yeah, the UK Championship's on. I'm working for Eurosport on this. And we're just getting to the business end now with the semi-finals tomorrow and the final Sunday. I've been up here a week. We're right in the heart of the snooker season now. You know, the nights are drawing in and all of that sort of stuff. So it's snooker weather, isn't it?
Yeah. Memories of watching you on the telly with me dear old mum and mugs of hot chocolate and all that kind of stuff. Like you say, yeah, it is the season and takes us through till Easter when the Worlds come up. But this is quite a tournament so far. We're speaking on Friday night after the quarterfinals. Amazing. Top 6 seeds are out.
What's amazing about sport is that you think you know the plot with things, and it's like when you watch a film, you think, well, I think I know how this is going to end. It's going to be this wonderful, good time, good feel good stuff. But in snooker, you don't know the story. I mean, Ronnie O'Sullivan, who won this age 17, he's completely dominant in the sport right now. He's world champion, world number one. He's won the last 2 huge events, but he's been whitewashed today, and he's not lost, but he's not lost by whitewash in a triple crown event ever before. So, and no one thought he was going to lose to Ding, albeit Ding has beaten him a little bit over the past. But there you are. Ronnie lost 6-0. Ding Junhui is back from almost the wilderness. And that's why we love sport, because we don't know the storyline.
And it gives an opening to a lot of the lesser seeded players now will be fancying their chances of raising the trophy.
Well, I mean, there's only a couple of players in this event still who have actually been UK champion. I mean, Ding himself has won it 3 times, but you've got to go back just to know that to happen, because he's been, as I say, since before lockdown, he's been really quiet. You know, he's been probably in a part of the world he didn't want to be at the time. He wasn't with his family in China. He was over here, and I think he didn't particularly want to be here during that period. His snooker suffered. Now he's got more freedom. Now he's playing well, and Sean Murphy, as I speak to you, is still in the event. He's won it before. Other than that, we're going to get a new UK champion, and that opens up the doors for lots of new and up and coming players.
Yeah, that was an incredible game yesterday against Judd Trump. Murphy looked out of it at one stage, but what a comeback.
Well, I mean, before the game, this is where snooker is. Look, snooker is a sport, yes, we know that, but it's not a sport he could hardly walk that morning. I saw him, and he couldn't move his neck. He could hardly bend over the table to play a shot, but then he seemed to make a century straight away, and then he finished off with 2 centuries, and he won his match. So, like, you couldn't come in off 30 yards bowling fast doing that, could you, at cricket? But he ended up. I think he forgot about his bad neck and back and all that, and just he was back to normal. Really, the adrenaline kicked in, and he played well. He played brilliantly, actually.
Now, you mentioned cricket. Obviously, you're well known for your exploits on the snooker table and on the microphone commentating these days. But you are a massive cricket lover, hence your appearance on this podcast. So just tell us about how you got into cricket, and then maybe let's talk about the passing of the late, great David English.
Well, I've always enjoyed cricket. I mean, I think with snooker, I think it's such a winter sport that come May through the summer, I often didn't play any snooker, or certainly not very much. There was no big tournaments. And from a very young kid, I completely loved cricket. I mean, I always followed it. But 1977, I would have been 14 years of age when the Ashes were on. England were losing to Australia, and after the first 2 Test matches, they recalled Jeff Boycott. And my dad, who also followed cricket, he was a snooker player as well, by the way. But he said to me, he's a great batsman. You know, when he comes back, it's going to be great. He's fallen out with everybody. And that I was hooked on the game that summer. When he came back, made all those runs, he made a century on his reappearance from the wilderness. Amazing. And he also made another century. I realised what England had missed then. And I was only 14. But, you know, I loved watching the game. I can't imagine I've missed half a day of any home test match ever since, you know, unless I'm doing something that I literally cannot be watching it or listen to it on TMS. You know, I've always watched cricket. And I mean, the Ashes winters, not only because we've lost I haven't stayed up all night very often because the hours are very unfriendly. And I think 2011, I might have stayed up and watched when we beat the Aussies. But cricket's been in my blood for all those years, and I've followed it so closely. I mean, I just love the game, so much. I grew up in West London. I used to go to Lords just to watch county games and everything as a kid. I really got into it, complete nerd. And I'm, in recent years, I've sort of, even though I'm a Middlesex fan, I've got a lot of friends who are Surrey fans, and whenever possible, I'll go to the Oval, watch county cricket, Test cricket, the lot, as well as being at Lords, which is just my favourite stadium in the world. It's just, to me, it's great. I know the tickets are a bit expensive now to go cricket, but at Lords, but I love the place. So born and bred in West London, Perivale and Ealing, and QPR are my football team. As a kid, when I grew up in Southall, in comprehensive in Southall, and you had two. I mean, unless you wanted to be a Leeds fan, who were great at that time in the 70s, or you wanted to be a United fan in football, it was either QPR or Brentford. Really, they were the two options if you were a local boy. And at the time, Brentford were not really a side you would follow necessarily. So QPR have always been my football team, but I don't go and see them play, but they've always been my side,
Yeah.
And as, going back to cricket, I spent so many wonderful days at Lords. It's unbelievable. One of my biggest regrets ever was many years ago. I had a chance to try and become an MCC member. I could be one of those people in the pavilion who maybe not everyone likes, and there was a 25-year waiting list, and I knew John Embury, and he said, I can get you forwarded and I can get you in and wait 25 years. And for some reason, I didn't do that. I just thought, well, that's 25 years seems a long way to me. I've never joined the list. And that's 35 years ago now. I mean, I'd have been in there with all the rest of them now, probably moaning and groaning and all of that stuff. I'd have been an MCC member, but I never took anyone up on that.
You should have done. You should have done. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah. When whoever I talk to on this program, and we've had some of the greatest names in the game, players, journalists, commentators, without exception, they all say that their favourite ground is Lords. You listen to players, and I'll get very sort of jealous to think of these guys that come down those famous steps and stride out, and just to hear how much it means to them is always very special. So I'm not surprised to hear you sort of say as well what a great place Lords is. It really is very very special. Completely. So we had the sad news of the loon, Mr. David English, passing away last week, and I gather you've got some very fond memories of the great man.
Absolutely. Well, I've always played cricket for just a Sunday side over in Surrey, and I've always been one of these to open the bat in all leg side. I didn't have any shots on the offside very much, and I never played a cover drive, but I played plenty of pull shots and stuff like that. I was not very good basically, but I had my moments at a very very moderate level. And I got to play in the charity game at Uxbridge. Strange enough, Dennis Lilly of all people was in that game. And it was to do with Paul Downton, the former England wicketkeeper. It was his benefit game for him. And I met David English for the first time in the pavilion. He said to me, "You're going to start playing for the Bunburys and all this." And I thought, well, this guy's really outgoing. Is he for real? And then, of course, over the next 15, 20 years, I got to play cricket in all of his Bunbury games. A great fixture list. Playing at the Oval, Old Trafford, Trent Bridge. But more for me, because I am such a fan, I was so lucky to play cricket against some of the all-time greats, under the sort of guise of being a snooker player, who the best of my snooker was world number 3, and that's been, a tag they've used all these years. But for me, it was just great to play with all these guys. I mean, I can remember I met David at this charity game in Uxbridge, and there were so many great memories of playing with him. But as I say, I ended up playing in a charity match early on where putting the batting with Bill Wyman of the Rolling Stones of all people, and Viv Richards was batting 3 in this game. And there's no way in the world I wasn't going to be. There's no way in the world I was going to get out before Bill, because I wanted to bat with Viv, and I managed to run Bill Wyman out, and batted with Viv. We put on 100, of which I made 17, and Viv was just an incredible man as well. I mean, it was just a joy to be on the same cricket field. It meant the world to me. It was one of my great sporting memories of my whole life. And that was all through David, all of the years, all of the people I met. I played with Joel Garner and people like Robin Smith, Alan Lamb, Michael Holding, a massive Brian Lara, all these people because of David, who was the most wonderful character. You meet people in life, I would say, that leave a real impact on you. I think in snooker now, I can name Jimmy White, who is a complete one-off. To be around him is a great joy. There's stories galore. And I would say David was the same. They broke the mold. There was nobody like him. And if you didn't know him, you were very unlucky, because he was a great speaker, great comedian, great joker. Never took himself seriously, and he managed to phone you up at sort of 8 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday or a Friday and say, "You're playing over on Sunday. We've got everybody there," and he'd name all these names. Some of them wouldn't turn up, but a lot of them would. And it was just this manna from heaven for me.
Yeah, I think it was a true mark of respect that when England played in the World Cup final on Sunday, they were wearing black armbands. And I think if people don't really understand the impact that David English had on the game over the last 30, 40 years, that should tell you everything. Because as you say, I mean, he brought through, I think, was there a stat I read about pretty much every single member of the England team over the last sort of 2 or 3 years certainly has come through the Bunbury scheme and been propelled by him.
Yeah, I mean, Jofra Archer was exceptional because we know that he came to English cricket through sort of from a different channel, didn't he? In other words, he'd grown up in the West Indies. But I think he said that over the last few years, almost everybody, the likes of Joss Butler, he was very, very praiseworthy because of the Bunbury setup. I mean, I played in a game with Paul, let me just think of Michael Carberry, who of course played for England when he was one of these junior players. One of the junior cricketers from the Bunbury Festival. And I saw his career from the age of about 14, 15, brilliant left-hander at the time. So a lot of those people sort of were allowed to flourish, go up through the grades, played cricket for England, and every one of them has got good words to say about David.
Yeah, it's incredible. And the amount of money that he raised as well. I mean, I often used to come across him at sort of big charity dinners, and he was always leading, in the auctions for whether it was signed bats or whatever else. He was always leading the charge and would invariably donate the money and then ask them to re-auction whatever item it was that he'd bid on.
Very persuasive man. A very persuasive man. He had a way with words. He could persuade you to be somewhere, even if you had something on. He go, "You must come along Sunday." And I say, "Well, I can't. I've got an old elderly relative I've got to visit." "Bring him along," he would say. "Bring him along. It'd be tremendous." So that's what you did. That's what he was like. But, very charismatic man, taken too young, unfortunately, and until very recently, I think very recently his health was good. It was all quite sudden the way things ended for him. But you'd hear him interviewed on a TMS a couple of times, story after story that were brilliant, and of course he got such a history of, managing the Bee Gees and playing a dead German in a war film and all this sort of stuff. Everything that he said was hilarious, but quite a good cricketer. I don't know if you ever saw him play cricket, but he's on the MCC ground staff, left-hander. And I remember once I batted with him, and he kept hitting a spinner over his head for 6. I said, "You're taking a risk." He goes, "Fouldsy, one thing in life I've learned to do is," he said, "you must enjoy the moment." And I would have got home tonight regretting not doing that. And he it just to sort of whack a half decent spinner over his head for 6. That was his idea of living life to the full, and that's what he was all about, And I've got a friend in snooker, Tony Mio. I'm trying to contact the former guy who was part of the Matchroom team, who used to play for the Bunburys too, and he was a really good cricketer, Tony. And he's now found out that poor old David's gone, and he left a little great impact on his life. He's a great friend of Jimmy White, so I've been contacting him through that, and there were so many stories. I mean, it wasn't only cricketers, because he got other players along. I mean, my son, when he was a kid, came to a Bunbury game, and he's kicking a football around with Ian Wright, and went back to school the next day and said, "I've been playing football with Ian Wright." And they said, "You can't tell all these lies." He goes, "No." He said, "I've been playing football with Ian Wright," because he was there. David had lured him along, who was also a good cricketer, by the way, Ian Wright,
Yeah, I heard
as
about
were
that.
many of the footballers. And what a great guy, by the way, in writing. So he was so nice to my son, all the kids. He understood that for him to kick a football around for half an hour, outside the pavilion of a cricket ground meant a lot to the youngsters. And he brought all these different worlds together, actors, all kinds of people. I played with Leslie Grantham of EastEnders fame, who's no longer with us as well, and, you just couldn't help it, but you'd call him Den. 2 runs there, Den. He goes, oh, sorry, that's not my name. He said, don't worry, I've been called a lot worse than that. It was the kind of thing where all these worlds collided, and I had the time of my life with all that. And it was all down to David.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I went to a few of them, and when we had him on the show, some of the stories. I mean, you almost think, no, that can't be true. But if you know David, it is true. He's not the sort of, it's just a life he led, and the company he kept was just incredible.
It was. I can remember, especially one day, we were playing against Stanford Cricket Club in a charity game against their village side, and we were batting second. And David said, "We've got Ian Bishop coming along later. He's going to be running a bit late." So we thought, yeah, this is another one of balloon stories. Ian Bishop's definitely not coming along. Anyway, about an hour into the game, they were about 80 for 1. Their 2 openers and made runs, and the number 3 was getting a few. And all of a sudden, a big car pulled up, like a limousine, and Ian Bishop got out. And I don't think he understood quite the nature of the game, because he came on straight onto bowl off a long run. We had 9 slips and a wicket keeper and someone down at fine leg. And he just bowled this side out in about 15, 20 minutes, and I just couldn't believe it. To this day, I can't believe that Ian Bishop turned up seemingly oblivious to the fact that he wasn't playing in a test match, and just ripped through this side. And it was just brilliant, I mean, I was standing at second slip, praying the ball wouldn't come to me, quite honestly, because he'd probably take the hand off. But that was what it was like playing for the Bunburys. You never quite knew what was going to come next. He was, as I say, he managed to get players. I played with Cole Hooper, and Roger Harper gave me a clinic in how to bowl spin and to field in the covers and all that. And I also played with Brian Close, all these guys. It's an amazing experience for someone like me who is a snooker player by professional, had been. But now I'm in this world that I've always dreamed about being in, Do
you think there's sort of parallels between playing snooker and I'd say red ball cricket? That the tactics, the concentration, the patience required. Is there a similar skill set?
Very possibly, but Barry Hearn, who was my manager then, told me I was not allowed to play cricket because if you break a finger, then you're out for 2 months. But I still played, and he never, most of the time, didn't know I was playing in these games. So I had to keep it a little bit hush hush. Nothing was going to stop me, actually. But look, as far as cricket is concerned, I was up early on Sunday morning watching the T20 World Cup in my hotel room here in York, and watched it all. Saw the guys with the armbands on, but at heart, I love Test cricket. That's my love. I completely think that that is the way that the game needs to go forward. I've accepted T20 cricket at first, wasn't so bad about it, but I love it now. I love the skills set that's required for it. But in reality, what I love is Test cricket, the 5-day game, the purest form, and everything that goes with it. And that's why one of my favourite players, is Alistair Cook in the modern game. And something about Alistair Cook I love. I know he's retired now; he's still playing down at Essex. But I love the way that he was nothing to do with social media. He had no idea about any of that sort of stuff. He was someone who just wanted to bat long, bat big, and make daddy hundreds, as Graham Gooch always said. So I admire him. A bit of a throwback, wasn't he, when you think about it? But that's something I liked about him. I didn't need him sort of playing every shot. I just liked him to bat all day for England. That's what I loved about him.
Yeah. All right, Neil, we'll let you crack on because you are in the middle of duties up at the Barbican. Yeah. But many thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, no, very, very, very lovely to hear your thoughts on the game, and indeed on David English as well. He'll be sadly missed.
It really sad loss. A truly wonderful man. If ever you knew him, anyone that did would know exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Neal Foulds, snooker and cricket extraordinaire. Thanks a lot for your time, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you.